All right, the session is now live. Sir, can we start the session?
Yes, yes, please.
All right, sir. Sharindra, kindly take over.
Be proud of your scars. They remind you that you have the will to live. With this, a very good evening to one and all present here. I, Shailendra C, welcome you all to the second segment of Talk Series, Make Dhanush Unveiling Their Pridepreneurs, organized by Entrepreneurship Cell, MIT University, Rajasthan, in association with MIT Innovation Incubator Jaipur, supported by Adal Innovation Mission and Institutions Innovation Council. Make Dhanush is an initiative by ESL AUR, where we are inviting entrepreneurs and speakers from Pride community to inspire us and give insights about different aspects around us. We believe that their views will create an impact on everyone attending the session. Now, I would like to extend my warm welcome to our guest for this talk show, Mr. Pal Krishna Vallapur, an MBA graduate who has obtained his degree from EST Dijon and moved on to become a kindergarten teacher in Berlin, which is the most blissful task of one's life. His song is Spirit. He worked in a corporate role in Stuttgart. After living and working in Germany for more than 12 years, he decided to transform his business for yoga and clay into his profession, which is full of creativity, and he named his business as Yogam Pottery. He is certified as yoga instructor from the Government of India and holds a certificate to practice Hatha Yoga. We wholeheartedly welcome you here, sir.
Thank you, Shailendra. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. That's great.
Thank you so much, sir. It's not just about the ideas, it's always about making the ideas happen. The topic for our today's talk show is molding passion into business. I would request our audience to post their queries in the chat box. Sir, to begin, as you have been active regarding the LGBTQ community, please explain our viewers what gender pronouns do you use?
Yeah, first of all, I'm Balakrishna. Everybody calls me Balu. I go by he, him, his pronouns.
Right, sir. So, did your gender identity affected your professional work, or did you face any difficulties?
No, not really. Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, I think the work that I do, it's, as you can see, some of the work, it's pottery. So I create variety of ceramic items and products. And as of now, so it's I have a studio where I opened it's for workshops and variety of pottery courses. And I also do my own production and products. So as of now, there hasn't been any impact on my business. Let's say negative effect, or negatively, it hasn't affected my business in any way. And I think why should it anyways? Because as of now, if you look at my work, it's really about my talent and the concept that I create, the work that I do. And I think there shouldn't be any association of my personal my gender to my work, because my work is work. And as a human, I think all of us, have our own creativity. And so, yeah, to cut it short, it hasn't impacted. And also, I've never really gone out there and put my gender as, face of my work or face of my studio as such. Yeah, probably that. I mean, it's been like since the Pride Month, I've been doing a lot of talks and been very active on social media. So I think now people kind of do know about, my gender or my gender identification. And as of now, no effect, no negative influence at all.
All right, sir. That sounds really great, sir. So, what reaction did you get from your friends and families when you came out of your closet?
That would take a long time to cover, but so I grew up, say, around 90s schooling and early 2000s, my degree and stuff. So when I grew up, or when I was conscious about my sexuality as such, I think there wasn't any social media, there wasn't any news or any talks about any of this, right? And so it was quite difficult initially. And then, of course, I came out to a friend, to my best friend in school. long back, surprisingly, or happily, he was kind of very supportive that way. And but there are also incidents where people who thought that they were my good friends, and I kind of told them about this, and they had some kind of problem, which I don't know what their problem was with it, but either they stopped talking, or they didn't keep in touch, or we never really kept in touch after that. Things like that happened as well. Apart from friends and apart from friends, it doesn't. I didn't really mind much. I think what most important for me was my family, because I'm very close to my family, and I think coming out to them, and it took a while, especially my parents. It took almost 1 year for them to to come to terms with it, right? And in between this 1 year, there were a lot of things going on. They're trying to get me to consult somebody, things like that. But all in all, right now, I'm really happy that my family knows about it. I came out to them, they support me, and they're like really my biggest supporters. And after the family, I think I never really bothered with anybody else, because I don't think that really, I mean, that I really don't care what others think about me, because I mean, of course,
Exactly.
the close friends, most of them that I know, most of my best friends, they all know me. I don't lie to people, but so that's what it is. My family and my closest friends and family accepts me the way I am. So I think nothing else really mattered or matters to me
Actually,
anymore.
sir, the most matters is your family.
It is definitely, and I think I can't really stress this enough for a lot of LGBTQ crowd and their family and friends, especially. Like, you don't have to say supportive words. You just be there and listen to them. When they're going through tough times, because it is quite a hard stage where you have to kind of cover your feelings and manipulate them and try to portray something else what the society accepts, right? And it's quite a hard task and quite a mental. It has a big influence on mental health, and so the kind of relief that I have after coming out to my family, I think, like I said, it's as if like you're like probably an elephant sitting on my shoulder or my chest, right? And I couldn't breathe before that, but after that, it really got off my chest and I could really breathe. And yeah, it's an amazing feeling that I have my friends and family support.
Great, sir. Sounds good. So initially you mentioned that there were no social media on the initial times. So on that time, how you put your views and perspectives of your inner self in front of people?
I think there was back then it was quite limited. I mean, of course, either the immediate friend circle that you have that you could go out and meet, either your college or school, or your neighbors if you're lucky enough, neighbors and cousins and friends of your age, like people of your age. That's the only thing with whom you could share your thoughts and your inner turmoils or your opinions. And it was a different time. I wouldn't say it was bad necessarily, because there was more personal interaction.
Exactly, sir.
Right, which has a different touch to it, which is really nice. And but of course, it's not as like now. One can connect with so many like-minded people on different social media platforms. Right. Back then, it was only your immediate circle, geographically or limited. Yeah, it wasn't much, but like I said, I think there were a little more stronger connections back then. At least with these little people that you had connection and with whom you could share stuff, there was a much more stronger personal connection.
Exactly. It's just like that we interact in one-to-one person more interactively
Yes.
as of we compare to the social media and all those things.
Yeah, definitely.
So my next question is, sir, basically I was curious about the differences in the LGBTQ community today from when you first started your journey. So will you please throw some light on this?
Yeah, I think, see, one thing that definitely has to do is with media, with social media, with a lot of online, with a lot of internet connectivity and all of that. The awareness has been created now in the crowd, and a lot of people are talking about it. I mean, we're celebrating Pride Month in India, which wasn't, much evident before. Back then, I think, like I said, even the online articles or the online information was quite limited, that about sexuality and gender in general, and there was nothing in media. Nobody would talk. Even back then, we had this. I even forgot. Like, I think we had this cable connection, what we call. We used to get star cable, whatever. Like, really long back. Where you could see some foreign programs, right? And even then, there wasn't anything, visible in that as well. So I think I myself, a lot of us didn't know what it actually meant to feel what we are feeling, right? Because the society says everything you see around you says it's wrong, it's different, it's abnormal. But then you feel something which, for you, for your heart and brain, it feels truth. It feels like, the truth. So it's, I think back then we really had very less culture. I myself knew about LGBTQ when I had access to internet, around when I was, I think, 16 or something. Till then I didn't know I couldn't name what I was feeling, what is going on. And then, of course, I think in society-wise, in Indian society, you see a lot of transgenders, whom we call hijras, who are, that was one section of the queer community that was visible and that has been, there for as long as we can remember. And but then they have been put in a very bad light, right? They always had, like, the society spoke about them negatively, or see the begging, or sex work, or of course they also had this other image that they were kind of like, they could give good blessings to people, right, during marriage or the new birth. So there was this, there was that, the transgender community one was very visible, and then otherwise really nothing else one could see or hear or read about. Of course, if one was very curious, and books, maybe one could find out in books, but I wasn't too much into books back then. So yeah, that was very quite limited information. And now, of course, right, now we're talking about pronouns, which is a very long journey. Which is really an impressive progress. And in fact, one way it's amazing, but one way also it's sad that we're still in a situation where we're still talking about all of this, right? It should ideally be a space in this world for everybody, where none of our gender and sexuality, anything should matter, what we do in our personal lives, and all of that. But yes, of course, because we have to take step-by-step progress towards that. I think now it's an amazing step that's been happening, and a lot of awareness, a lot of people talking, even I'm here confidently talking about all of this, right? It's been a big journey. So quite a lot has changed within the last 2 decades, I would say.
Right, that's so true, sir.
Yeah.
So basically, India offers a wide range of geographical diversity. You choose Bangalore as your destination. What was the reason behind it?
So Bangalore always has been, I come from a place called Anantapur, which is a small town in Andhra Pradesh. It's around 200 kilometers from Bangalore. So geographically, one thing was it made much sense, to come to Bangalore, especially for my studies back then. That's how I came here. I haven't lived here for long. I think I lived in Bangalore for 5 years. But Bangalore has always been where family is also, like most of, my brother, my cousins, and I used to come every year here, spend at least a month. And also geographically, like I said, when I decided to move back, I had to, I was contemplating about moving to Goa, because I really found it an amazing place to be, because you meet a lot of like-minded artists and people, creative people in Goa. That was one thought that I had. But then to start up a business, that was something that I really had to think of. And when I thought about business-wise, it made much more sense to be in Bangalore, right? When I meant business, I have to keep on doing what I love doing, and for that I need to make it sustainable. That means something has to come in, even if I don't make a product. Like today I make it, but tomorrow I don't make it. But that doesn't mean I should suffer from because of finances.
Just have to make that environment to work it.
Yes,
That's
and
what
yes, and then Bangalore made much more sense than in Goa, because Goa, in monsoons you can't really do much work. There's less footfall, there's less tourists, there will be less students and all of that. Bangalore, I knew that Bangalore has a big potential. It has always had a big potential. And now especially there's a lot of art enthusiasts, a lot of people who are interested in pottery and arts and crafts, and not just individual consumers, but also a lot of artists, right? There are also a lot of artists and networking and logistics wise, everything made sense. So that's how Bangalore was the choice.
So what made you switch from a good corporate job to start your own business?
So it's always a little difficult to exactly explain what I was going through, but so before that I did a kindergarten job in Berlin, and I did that for 5 years, and then I decided, okay, now I would like to have a little more money, so that would be great. And kindergarten job wasn't paying much, although it was quite satisfying. But at some point, one thinks of future and progress and stuff. And I thought, okay, anyways, I have an MBA, and so I made use of that, and then I got into corporate. And 4 years I worked in corporate, and I think it's after the first 2 years was a honeymoon phase, of course, because you would get a lot of you would get good income every month, regular income, and it's quite disposable. So you could just travel around, and the perks and all of that was really nice. And of course, the third year is when the crisis has started, basically. So to just put it in simple terms, every Sunday evening I would have a breakdown, because the next day I have to go to office, right? So it kind of started off like that, almost like a midlife crisis. And then so it was just basically that I couldn't bear sitting in an office in front of a desk and answering emails and doing stuff. And I've never been an IT person, and this job, half of the job later, translated into also an IT job. So I was into data security, but then it also got into a little bit of IT and stuff, and it really bothered me. And life wasn't pleasurable anymore. At the end of the day, whatever you're doing, basically, you want through that, you want to make your life pleasurable, right? Satisfied. Otherwise, what's the point in doing anything that you're doing, right? Of course, for a lot of them, I'm sure there might have been a lot of commitments, issues, can't quit and stuff. But luckily, I didn't have all of that, and I said, yeah, what am I doing? Like I can actually quit and go and find something that I love doing, rather than being miserable in this job forever and wasting my time. So that's how it started. And so at that point, no amount of money made any, gave any joy, satisfaction as such. And I was kind of getting a little depressed in life in general. So I think that was a big sign for me to do that. And so it took me almost 2 years to decide and, do the process and then quit. That's what happened. Now, of course, I wouldn't say there are struggles even, with what I'm doing right now, but I think I can be at the end of the day satisfied and happy about it. And I don't mind, sitting in the studio on Sundays or Saturdays or at night, that doesn't bother me at all. So I think this one feeling where I just couldn't bear things anymore with the way my life was going, that really strongly made me gave me the strength even to decide and quit my job.
It's just the fact that what we love doing, we don't want any holidays from it. We keep on going without any tiredness and something that bothers us. It's all we want to do is that our job.
Right.
That's
and
what our passion is.
I think that, how one could say that you're missing the spark in the life, or there's something kind of missing, this feeling that you're not happy, you can't enjoy things, no matter how much what you buy, it doesn't give you the happiness that you're looking for. And I think basically the spark or the salt in the dal probably could also be mentioned that.
That's, so, sir, when you started your business, did you face any difficulties and all?
Yes. So pottery or studio pottery,
what
what I
was the-
do is, yes, tell me.
Yeah, you continue.
No, so what I was saying is, so pottery as such, till now, or I mean nowadays it's kind of picking up. It's kind of becoming into studio pottery, but I think for the longest time, all we have known is the traditional potters who would be either in Pottery Town, and so I discovered this through a common friend of mine in Goa, and then I saw studio pottery back, there where I did my internship as well. And then when I came back to Bangalore and decided to set it up, the first thing was the space, right? Because you need space, you need a couple of instruments and equipments to use. And I think the first challenge was to figure out if I could place a kiln in the house, like in an apartment complex, for example, because kiln is basically the oven where we fire the ceramic product. And these days you get an electric kiln, but one wasn't sure because it goes to almost 1200 degrees centigrade, right? So it's quite high fire power thing. So all of these issues, and then the clay, and then how would you manage clay in the house, for example, right?
It's not that
like if one
possible.
look exactly one thinks of it from a traditional perspective, from a traditional potter perspective, it would be like, oh, it's going to become dirty, all of that. So there are a lot of these notions that I had to overcome first of all myself, because I had to go and visit a couple of pottery studios, and most of them were like proper studio setups. But then I kind of inquired, did my research, and there was information available, especially in Indian studio pottery and equipment and all. So I think that took me a while to figure out. But for all of you who are interested in pottery or ceramics, you can little studio, little space in your house, maybe. Pottery wheel is probably cheap now these days. You get an electric one. The kiln is also around that size. And if you have a shelf like that, for example, it could be. So it took me a while to figure that. Of course, the initial struggle was to be to make working, to make it sustainable. First, I was gonna make products, and then I expected that I wasn't satisfied with the things I was doing, so I didn't want to sell. So that was a big struggle initially, right? So I had to really focus on my work and improve, and then make pieces that I'm satisfied with, that I can confidently sell to people and offer to people. That took almost 6 months. That was a difficult time because there was no income, and all of.
It's just the toughest time when you're just switching from one job to another, switching to your passion, basically.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello. Hello, sir. Am I audible to you? Pardon, please.
Hi, Shailen, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You are audible now. Sir. So you're not audible. You're just muted. No, am I audible, sir?
I think Mr. Balakrishna is having some network issues, so he will rejoin.
Hello.
Sir, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So some technical issue.
That's fine. That's completely fine.
Right. Sorry. I don't know how long what you guys could hear. So yeah, the struggles of business, right? I mean, I was talking about setting up the studio in the house and then the production, the first 6 months, and to make it sustainable. I think those were the struggles initially, and but now, of course, studio pottery and people know it, and a lot more awareness in that field as well. But that was, to make a business or a working, thing in an unconventional setup. I think that was the biggest struggle initially.
All right. So my next question to you is, how would this struggle different for you as compared to other entrepreneurs?
I think that's probably an unfair question, because I think every entrepreneur, depending on their business, depending on their, there are a lot of factors, right? Geography-wise, location, logistics, marketing, money-wise, a lot of things could create problems, or could be issues initially for an entrepreneur, and even oneself, right? Because overthinking, for example, that's one of the biggest struggles I think as an entrepreneur one has to deal with probably day in, day out, is self-confidence and to be able to make decisions, right? Would this work? Wouldn't this work? And all of these things. I don't know. I mean, for example, if somebody has an established business, say like a parent's business, somebody overtook it, right? That would have a different struggles that come along with it, but then they have an established business setup already. And I think in my case, that wasn't the thing. And also coming from a family which is, I would just carefully say middle class, safety and security family, where one is kind of educated and raised to become an employee of some software company, probably, because in the South especially, it's a big deal. Like everybody's into software, right? And then get regular income every month, safety and study and buy a house. This was the standard setup, and this was the mentality that I came from the family and from the surroundings. And I think the biggest struggle for me as a person, or probably different from others, is also that I wasn't very self-confident growing up, and I wasn't very self-assertive as well. And I think that's a very big struggle if you're not that, in terms of in terms of starting a business and running it, because you have to make a lot of decisions, and a lot of decisions you do make based on your self-confidence and your experiences. And if you don't have any of that, then it really becomes a big issue initially. And I think also just a word of advice, or just a word based on experience, I can say being an entrepreneur is a really lot about working on your own self, because whatever you think is not working, whatever your limitations are, personal limitations, to make them not limit your business, I think that's the biggest deal as an entrepreneur, right? So there are a lot of these struggles, and I think probably for somebody who had an established business, I didn't. Somebody who was kind of outgoing and extrovert and go-getter, I think I wasn't. All of these things. Those were some struggles that I had to go through initially.
Which was the toughest struggle you came over throughout your entrepreneurial life?
Did you say which was the toughest decision, or which was the toughest situation?
The toughest situation, basically.
Okay. I think quite a few, but I think as an entrepreneur, I would probably mention it, because I think the first, like I said, the first 6 months was a bit of struggle. as an artist, as a business guy, as an entrepreneur. And I think, or 8 months, I would say, I really had this situation once where I said, I'm going to quit because I can't take this. I was kind of getting really depressed, thinking a lot about how I'm going to manage and would I be able to manage, all of this. And I almost decided to quit and probably go back to Germany and try doing something. I didn't know what, probably yoga teaching, I know. But I kind of almost was at the verge of, closing the thing in, I think in the 6th month. And then one of my closest friends, she has a business as well, and she's been running it for a while. And she kind of told me, listen, like I've taken so many steps to come to where I was at that point of time, start the studio and all of that. Why don't you give another 2 months or, I think 6 months time, she also said 6 months. And if you still feel like quitting, then quit, right? It's okay. And I thought, okay, that probably that makes sense. And then I decided to listen to her, and then I gave time. And of course, within the 6 months, then I could really see, it was developing. I was, more creative. I was working on a lot of other stuff, and I had students coming in as well. So things changed within the 6 months. I think that was one of those very tricky situation, because if I would have given up, I wouldn't have been where I am right now. Probably, I don't know where else, but I wouldn't be discovering the joy of working with clay more, and yeah, that would be one situation.
And what was the basic motivation for you on that specific toughest time? Like what made you boost up your progress and all things?
I think more than motivation, I think the fear of probably having to go back to a corporate job. I think that was that was the biggest motivating factor, in fact, because I know for sure that I did not want to go back to corporate job, right? I mean, of course, corporate jobs are the ones that pay well these days comparatively, right? And initially, and so I think it's more than a motivation that way. It was more the fear of having to go back to work in front on a desk job or something. I think that really pushed me to try out and to venture out and to to just dare and do things.
So sir, being an artist, each creation means a lot. So what comes in your mind while making them for someone, and what is your advice budding artist and about not to give up their dreams?
I think as an artist, especially these days, it's I think even being human is in general becoming a little difficult or tough these days, in terms of the amount of exposure that we have, the amount of social media and everything that we have. And as an artist, I think one really has to ground themselves. I think that's when I say grounding, it means all the thoughts that are wandering, that's telling you, like somebody else posted this today, somebody did something the other day, or like on Instagram, and they're having a great life, or they're doing amazing work, and then you start comparing subconsciously or unconsciously, right? And I think when I say grounding, it means to get your thoughts back to yourself and to your passion and to your work. I think that's one of the biggest, that's one difficult thing these days, especially, like I said, with all the exposure that we have and with all the amazing artists that we see around on Instagram or on various platforms. And also one thing from experience, what I realized was being an artist, it really has to, even if you make it, say, your profession, right? At the end of the day, money shouldn't be the deciding factor. I know it is important, because it is important, I know for myself, but your goal shouldn't be like, I want to make money out of this, right? And if I make this piece, can I make money out of this? That shouldn't be the motivating factor for any kind of creative work, I would say, because what makes your piece special, what makes your art special, is the kind of passion and the kind of your touch to it, and that comes only through with intense passion and focus, and not because you want to make money out of it. That might work sometimes, that might not work sometimes. In the long run, it wouldn't work because it's going to be very taxing, because if things doesn't work out, if you can't sell the piece, then you would be disappointed. But I think I have a lot of pieces still sit around in my, in the cupboards, and some of them I've made it with really great amount of passion than others sometimes. Like, some of them require a lot more time, and I do that, I dedicate that for that. And at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't like it, or somebody doesn't necessarily buy it, I'm still happy to see my, my piece, because that gives me the joy that I still remember the time that I put into, the effort I put into, and the outcome that has come out. Right. So I think as an artist, that's one thing definitely to, or even as a budding artist, I think you really need to focus. And other thing is try and express yourself. I think that's what makes each one of us unique, and that's what makes your artwork unique, right? Because if you, if you try and copy somebody else initially, it's fine to learn the skill, but I think over the period of time,
it doesn't work for you.
Exactly. And eventually, I think what makes your piece special and your work special is your own touch to it. And I think that really one has to discover and engage with your work more. The more you do, the better you get at things, and you discover a lot of things, right? So, and not giving up. I think that's, again, like I said, mentioned previously, just because the first 6 months didn't work out, or the first 1 year didn't work out, or your 10th piece or your first piece doesn't come out the way you want it to come, I think that's not really the reason to give up, right? So you should really try and work on it again and again and again. And that really, really helps. I think most of us know this, but one has to be reminded at some point of time.
Basically, someone else's idea won't work for you, because at the end of the day, the only one thing to seek for is the pleasure. And from someone else's idea, you cannot make it out. So what matters the most is your own perspective and own idea to build your passion and go from all these things.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
So would you like to share any amusing experience you had along the way?
In terms of pottery, or?
Yeah, in terms of pottery, or through your entire life.
No, I think for me, I think there are a couple of, there was this one comment from one of the Instagram followers, in terms of my work. And that was, I think, some couple of months, I think probably 3-4 months back. And so I started making these special vases and jars where I get a lot of inspiration from traditional Indian art. Especially right now I'm working on Indian temple architecture. So because we do have beautiful temples across India, or even mausoleums for that matter, which have amazing artwork, right? I mean, they've done it like some centuries ago. And so I try and get inspiration from them and translate it into my own work. This one person, I work on Instagram, and comment or message me, DM me saying, one of my pots that I made reminded him of his grandmother, because they had some similar pot made out of brass in the house, and it brought him the memories, from his childhood with his grandmother. I think that was a really amazing feeling, to know that one of my works that I did with my own inspiration kind of could bring back memories for somebody else from their childhood. And I think that was just an incredible feeling to hear that. I think as an artist, that was an amazing feedback to get. That was really nice. Yeah, I mean, other than that, personal life, I think there are a lot of them, but we'll keep it personal for now.
So as you have been working in teaching sector, corporate sector, and now it's in the startup world, it would have been a beautiful journey with lots of turning points. What was the biggest turning point of your life?
I mean, it definitely has to be this quitting a corporate job, I think, or deciding that not to work for somebody else and to work for my own self and to do what I love doing. I think that definitely has been one of the biggest turning points. And of course, to get there, I think there are a lot of other factors, and probably one more one of the other turning points would be, moving to Berlin and right after my MBA, and started working with kids. I think that's again, that kind of did something to me at that point, right? My thought process was changed. Working with kids and in a foreign country and living in all of that. Working with kids is amazing. I don't know if most of you have experienced, but it is quite taxing at the end of the day. But I think during the entire day, it's just an amazing process to watch them do what they do and to learn what they're, how and what they're doing, how they're learning social skills, how they're learning negotiating skills, how they're learning initiative taking skills. Like you see kids, there are always these little groups, 3-4 kids or 2 kids, and usually one of them will be the leader, one of them will be making decisions, 2 of them will be following, and probably one of them will be like, kind of here, not there kind of situations. And these were really fun to watch, the little clusters of social interactions. That kind of gives you a lot of ideas how we humans work in general as well, right? Yeah, I think that kind of definitely gave me the little push up initially back then, right? To see things differently and to kind of live in the moment, especially because that's what kids do, right? They get a candy and they're the happiest people in the entire world, right? Or do you make them their favorite sweet? They're like probably, they're in love with you and they can do anything for you like that. Because these are these momentary joys that we as adults, I think, tend to miss out a lot. So yeah, these two would be the main turning points, I would say.
Such a good experience. So we have a few questions in chat box. If you don't mind, can I address them for you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Someone heard you are as a also yoga instructor. So how do you manage yoga and pottery together?
That's a very valid question. I kind of, to be honest, and I'll just be purely honest, I do struggle with my yoga practice a little bit, especially since my pottery has taken more time, or is taking most of the time these days, because I'm setting up a new studio, starting after the lockdown, all of that. But yoga has always been something that I fall back onto usually, because even as an entrepreneur, as a pottery studio, even as an artist, I think there are days when it's really low. You don't have confidence, or you probably are in doubt with what you're doing, or things like that. And I think these lows are could be very problematic if you keep on pondering on them. And that's when usually definitely meditation, especially, that really helps me out. That's when I go and sit, meditate. And meditation doesn't necessarily mean sitting for half an hour or 1 hour. It could be even 10-15 minutes for me, just pure focus and absolute focus. And that really helps to relieve the stress. And then after that, I'll say, okay, one more day and we'll look after, we'll check out, tomorrow will be different. So, and of course, physical point of view, yoga asanas are amazing. I mean, as a young guy, I never really put a lot of interest into it or thought about it. I used to practice on and off because my father used to force me back then, but which I'm happy about now. But as a young guy, I'm like, oh, come on, who would want to do yoga and meditation and all? That's for old people, But I think that's what if one ventures into it, you would really realize how amazing it is, because physically, mentally, it works for both. And asanas, for example, when you practice asanas, it's an amazing feeling. You wouldn't even know there is a muscle that exists unless until you do one particular asana, for example, right? And meditation also is, like I said, again, amazing thing, especially for somebody who is either anxious or going through anxiety issues, or who is not okay with their own thought process, for example. I think meditation really helps there. And So I use this right now, yoga and meditation, to kind of complement my life, with pottery. I've kind of stopped yoga teaching right now because of the space constraints. It's almost a year that I've stopped teaching it. But like I said, my own practice, I do that because without it, I think I would probably like on 10 coffees. If some person is on 10 coffees, I would be like going crazy.
So someone asked that sometimes you find yourself procrastinating. So what do you do to minimize it so it doesn't affect your personal and professional life? So what makes you go through all these things? Like how you stop procrastinating to things?
Yeah, that's
Sequel.
again a very, very valid point because I go through that a lot as well. And especially the last months when you have lockdown, when you have when you're sitting at home and you don't have a choice, and then you get into probably a comfortable zone, sitting, eating, watching, Netflixing, whatever. Things become a little difficult when you have to start working again, right? So get back into work mode. I think so. One thing is, of course, to kind of do what you love doing. I think that really helps, definitely, because you would want to do it without anybody forcing you or motivating you. That's definitely one point. But apart from that, I think what also helps is really to kind of be conscious about the fact that it is okay to procrastinate, right? A little bit. But if you see a pattern in yourself, if you keep doing that again and again and again, I think then you might really have to think about why you're doing it, what's happening. But a little bit of procrastination is okay. And I think that actually helps us certain times to, be okay with what's happening. And also you should tell yourself that it is okay. For example, today you get up and you're not in a mood. It is okay to not work in the morning, but let's say I'm going to work from afternoon, right? So take baby steps, not be harsh on yourself saying, oh God, no, I'm not able to work and damn, and I'm not motivated. Why am I like this? And then you get into a really bad circle of thoughts. Why am I like this? Why can't I do this? Then it really goes out of control. So I think acknowledging that it is okay to procrastinate a little bit, but have smaller goals, that also helps. About tomorrow, think about tomorrow, not about, a month ahead or something. That really helps. But having said all of this, I think one also has to, with social media again, because of course, social media is a big thing. We are living in a world where it's important to value time and earn money out of it. Time is money. That's the motto, right? But I think one has to be careful with that, because I think if you are not internally happy and if you're not internally okay, and then if you keep stressing time is money and I can't take Sunday off because I really have to work and get things done, and I'm, all of this pressure of instant success or instant things, and all of this, I think that one has to really be careful. So that's where, if you see Instagram, it's only about success stories and everything is all about, nice and flowery and rich and all of that. And we automatically think, okay, this person is always happy, always going on tours, always, buying things, or always like, having expensive cars, whatever, doing amazing work every other day. But it's not like that. And I think, just that consciousness a little bit to say it is okay to procrastinate, but get your work things done with smaller goals and acknowledging that it is fine. I think that really helps.
Sir, do you think pottery can be effective therapy in the pressure and the anxiety?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. So pottery teaches you endurance, I think, and it's very humbling work, because so each pot that one sees, or even a cup for that matter, it takes almost 2 weeks to be done, right? And it has a big journey on the wheel, then trimming, then firing, again taking it out, coloring and firing again. And at any point of time, it can go wrong. And so what the first thing I've always been told as a potter, or even one reads as a potter, or hears, is that you need to have patience and endurance, right? If the first pot breaks, then you go on to the second pot and you work again, and then you have learned some experience by then. So that really helps to learn patience, definitely one thing, and to enjoy the moment, right? So you enjoy the process rather than the outcome. But at the same time, I think working with clay itself, touching with your hands, feeling the clay and molding it is very stress relieving. And I think it has to do with the sense of touch, right? Which we don't use anymore, not much, right? Even we eat with spoons or, a lot of other things like that. We try not to use our sense of touch these days. I think pottery that way is really gives you the full opportunity to work with clay with your own hands, and that's really stress relieving and very satisfying. And at the end of the day, if you have a product that you've created, molded with your own hands, with all the hard work, and you take a cup into your hand, it's probably the best feeling that you would ever experience, or the best joy you would ever experience. Probably one of the joys that I can compare with what child goes through sometime, as a child. And that's very motivating internally as a person, right? It's motivating, and you need that motivation to work and to be aspiring and to create goals. And that way pottery really helps for all of these things.
As we approach the end of this beautiful talk show, I must say it has been a wonderful to have an interactive session with our respected guests. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Manju Kaushik ma'am to share her kind words on the session. Over to you. Are you there, ma'am?
I think there may be some technical issues.
Oh, okay. So, let's continue. She is not there. Okay, fine. No issues in that case. I would now like to thank on behalf of Team Entrepreneurship Cell, Amity University, Rajasthan, and Amity Innovation Incubator, Jaipur, to our speaker Balkrishna Valapu for joining us today and inspiring young entrepreneurs and sharing your valuable thoughts with us. I would also like to thank Dr. Manju Kaushik ma'am, organizing chair, for her kind support throughout the event. A very special mention for Mr. Sahil Bhutani, the entire IT team and Team Entrepreneurship Cell AUR for their tireless efforts and dedication in organizing such series, and to the wonderful audience present here today. But before leaving, stay tuned with us throughout this month with our new and exciting speakers. Our next session would be on 17th and 18th of July on Instagram and Zoom respectively. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Shailendra. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So it was great interacting with you, and we hope we make future connections, and it will be great if we connect with you in future.
Sure, definitely. Thank you. And you can get in touch with me on, Instagram, Yogam Pottery, or my website, or any which way. And whatever help, if you like, in terms of, ceramic work, or, aspiring, or creativity, anything, please, anytime you can message me, or
Right, sir. We'll contact
get
you
in touch.
first person.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
to
much, sir.
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sir, we can end the session now.
So we can end this session now. ये सेशन एंड करा दो प्लीज. स्पीकर गया, एंडिंग होगी. मंजू मैम का नाम लिया बट
Kevin, please mute yourself.
Please end the session.